Good afternoon. I have the good fortune, and a very good fortune, of working with 5 award-winning colleagues here. And I say that not out of any sort of false modesty or trying to ingratiate myself, but I say it for a reality. I have been in online teaching, as we talk about here, since 2006. And one of the realities of online teaching that I have found, the deeper I've gotten into it, the title today, From Solo to Ensemble, in one sense is an evolution also of my thinking regarding the realities of teaching online. It does take a collective effort. It takes a collective effort in terms of development. It takes a collective effort in terms of revision of courses. And it takes a collective effort of people with varying degrees of skills and authority that they bring to this ongoing process of creating courses online and delivering instruction online. So our panel here, starting with the esteemed Dr. Dugan, and this is important in a sense because when you're thinking about online, there are a whole host of issues you have to deal with. One of these issues, operational. The constant getting and disbursement of resources of all kinds, dealing with shifting realities regarding massive changes, rapid changes in technology. So you have the element here, even, I've talked with Larry a great deal, for example, regarding the elements of online teaching and stuff. The actual running of Instructional Technologies Department is an immense undertaking, and it is also very much part of what we do. Tom Capuano, who I've had many wonderful discussions with, but the thing is, part of this also too, as I conceived when we developed this panel, it's one thing to have the academic knowledge of a discipline, but it's another thing to have the accurate and thoughtful and extensive understanding of computer technology and course development. It's a rare daily double. And I know I don't possess it. So one of these realities here that is a change is you have to have this partnership. Tom is one of the key elements of this partnership. The woman Andrea Gilbert is one of the absolutely essential elements of this partnership, let me tell you. Because it's understanding basically not only just content, but how you deliver it, how you pitch it. It is different, asynchronous than synchronous. And what I just said there probably might evoke an NSS response from some people, but it is easy to overlook the obvious. When I first started, the kind of prevailing wisdom was, you could do what you do in the regular classroom and translate it to online. Don't happen that way, okay? It's understanding that and having to work with that as well. You've heard a great deal of how massive changes in libraries, particularly with OER. And these issues will continue as we have more students taking online courses, more students taking courses, period. Anjali is one of the people that we can come to and in various and sundry ways gain assistance in that because this is ongoing change. That's one of the things about this reality. The reality, it doesn't freeze in time. It changes. And the changes are often similar, but there's a lot of difference as well as being able to adapt to that. And last but certainly not least, among other things, he makes me look good on camera, which is damn difficult to do, let me tell you, because I have a face that can be loved by my wife, my mother, bulldogs, and radio. But at the same time, how do you interact with students through medium? So let me explain this very key point. This is something I mentioned last year at the conference at Oneonta. Have you ever heard of the Canadian communications theorist Marshall McLuhan? In the 60s and 70s, when he was talking about television, He talked about the idea that the medium is the message. To paraphrase McLuhan, when it comes to online education, the platform influences, even shapes the delivery of content. And by content, I mean thought, I mean facts, concepts, paradigms. I would argue to you that the medium is akin in online education as gravity is to physics. It is there, it is always present, you must work with it, you cannot avoid it. How do you navigate it efficiently and effectively? All of these people here, in a sense, help me do that. And that's why this is important, okay? So as we progress, let me go ahead and I'll turn it over to our colleagues here. Well, it takes this. That's the thesis. This is why we're talking about solo to ensemble. Larry, I'm sorry I didn't explain this to you earlier. Okay? It's not just that you have people working together. How do they work together? What is the relationship of the working together? I picked the word ensemble deliberately because in an ensemble, if you heard ensembles perform, all the musicians are effectively equal. They are contributing their professional skills to the performance of pieces. But we're not talking about a symphony here that would have a conductor. We are talking about, say, these 5 or more all playing together. That's a different relationship. It's a relationship of equals, which is important to create. So let me turn it over to people who want to drop in here. And I was talking about just that relationship here. How do you develop it? How do you foster it, so to speak?
I don't know, do you guys want to start with kind of our basic process, kind of what it is, and we'll bounce off from there?
Yep.
Yeah, is that on the next slide, Bill?
Let me see if I can get it for you.
There we go.
There we go, right there.
Okay. Well, I guess I can start. Maybe we'll tag team this one. As far as what our course design process looks like at MCC, about 3 summers ago, I had the privilege of walking our first cohort through this. It's a team-based approach. Basically, we wrap around a faculty member with support services from instructional design, library, multimedia, and we have, I think it's an 18-week step process, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a bit. But basically, our approach is we come to a table much like this, kind of a roundtable discussion, talk about the hopes, the dreams of the course, the outcomes, and then we start building from there. And then we, from there, basically assign responsibilities. But it's definitely kind of a collaboration of ideas. And it's been going pretty well, right, Bill?
From my end, yes, I would say without question.
Yeah. So I don't know, what would you add to our team approach?
So we had adopted the Oscar rubric, so that was about 3 years ago. So we used that as a guideline to help with the process and helping faculty go through and review their courses or design new. So there was a lot involved in that process, so we created a handbook for faculty as a team. So it was really a joint effort. We took a lot of information in the process from some SUNY collaborations, from Oswego was where we kind of borrowed some of the process from and kind of adapted it and made it our own process to fit with the course design team. And we spent a lot of time going through each of the phases and steps. So we had our coordinator, Martha Kendall from MCC. She helped us kind of put the groundwork in place of what those phases look like, just to give faculty a guideline or a roadmap of where this starts and where are we going to end. So they have some steps in between. So Tom and I spent a lot of time kind of retweaking some of the steps and making sure that there was checkpoints in between. So kind of starts with an initial team meeting with the instructor, with the instructional designer and the faculty member. There's a lot of conversation between that, but we do meet as a whole team, and we talk about their course module planner. So they'll kind of lay out their course structure. We'll help guide them through some of the holes, or maybe some of the questions about, how I did this before in a face-to-face class. How can I get this in the online format? What should I do? So, and then from there, the faculty is developing their content, but they have support from the whole team at the same time. So it's really a lot of different check-in points, and by the end, the faculty member is reviewing their course with Oscar rubric. We're looking at the course through that lens, and the faculty overall, feel supported in that process. So we feel it's gone very well. And I don't know if anybody else wants to add to that.
A couple points I'd like to add to that. I mean, you hear there really kind of the basic structure that we've built, but at the same time, it's a very flexible structure. And part of the very first thing that we do when we're meeting with a faculty member is we really talk to them about the course that we're looking at. And we discuss if it's only been a face-to-face course up to this point, which a lot of the courses end up being that we're working on. If it's only been face-to-face, okay, what works in the face-to-face context? Sometimes what doesn't work also. And we kind of bounce off of there, and if it's a course that's already been online, whether entirely online or sometimes online, sometimes face-to-face, we'll discuss, okay, what's working for you, what's not working for you. And I think really that kind of listening to the faculty has served us well, and I mean, that's part of the whole process that I really enjoy as a participant in it, is that we really get to be creative in some ways, because we're really looking at it as, I say problem solving, not that there's necessarily a problem, but just as a puzzle, I guess, and to figure out, okay, what are different ways that we can deliver this content to folks, and we also try and put ourselves as different members of the team here who may or may not have much content matter knowledge going into looking at this course. We try and put ourselves into the place of the students, and okay, would I as a student get out of this course what we want the students to get out of it? I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's kind of going off of that. Like, I think the nice thing about this sort of ensemble structure that we're doing about is that, I think I go into all these meetings with some kind of idea about what I want to make sure to touch on, like OER and copyright and library resources and all of that. But you're bringing up like problem solving. Like, it's interesting when somebody poses a problem or something. Like, I think what's valuable is that all of us have different areas of expertise and different skill sets, so we might see that problem and just respond to it differently. So all of these different solutions kind of get out there on the table.
I think one of the things we look at it, like with this right here. So for example, I've had a good, one of the good things with the relationship, the Oscar rubric. With the instructional designers, when they put the Oscar rubric together effectively in the course template, then it's like a form of quality control for me. I know that if I'm using this template, it's effectively vetted these elements. This is something we might see, for example, down the road when it talks about issues of accessibility. In other words, how do you do that well? How do you build this so you effectively have a process not just of creation, but later revision? Because that's the thing with these courses. They're not set once and for all time. You change them over time, but how do you do the change? You can't create something de novo every time. That's very inefficient and ineffective. You're effectively going to have change and continuity, and this is what I bring in for me from history, change, continuity, contingency. You've got to have a balance of the two, change and continuity. You can't just say, oh, we're going to junk it all and put something new together. It don't work that way. All right, it just doesn't. And they're certainly not in institutions. I mean, that's one of the things I would ask Larry, if you want to talk about, when you talk from the operational perspective, how important is that to try to find the processes that allow for that sort of efficient, effective evolution over time?
So probably 90% of the instructional design models we see, most of the job is about supporting the LMS, right? Teaching the faculty to use the LMS and having them put their content into it. I wanted to get away from that as much as possible. I wanted to not have the faculty be Blackboard experts. I wanted them to be historians. I wanted them to be biologists. I wanted them to be musicians, right? There's a couple of ways to achieve that. One way is create a template, make everybody forced into that template, and jam every course and make it looking exactly the same with very little creative process. And then you just take that and give it to all the faculty members that are teaching that course, and there's the models that are like that out there, and there's SUNY models like that out there. But I come from a different mindset. If you ever read the book Zap in Education, there's a great book out there, ZAPP in Education, and it's about science of empowerment. And when I got there, I was charged with Terry Keys in the back, wave Terry, to no longer build the online learning program, but to build a virtual campus, build something that was bigger than just an online learning program. We wanted to be inclusive of all the areas of the college. One of the other charges was our division includes libraries, includes a lot of different places, includes instructional technologies as far as video production and those types of things. So how do you take that group of people and have them work together? It may sound like an incredibly expensive way of doing things by bringing a team of people for every course, but if you think about the fact that now the team of people are breaking those pieces of course into chunks with the faculty member now as a subject matter expert, that becomes a much more robust model, because now you've got eyes on that are different, right? If Bill wants to come in and say, I got to find these things on, I'm making stuff up, Bill, okay? I do it too sometimes. The history. I know. I need some video to correspond to convey something between 1910 and 1925 in American history, and I'm having problems finding that. Well, don't find that. The librarian will find that for you. That's what librarians do, right? They find resources and help you put them into your course. If not, we'll go shoot it, and I've got a multimedia person to do that. The goal is to, let's face it, online courses can be unbearably boring, right? You know it. You've seen online courses. They're all text, right? And we know that our student, especially an 18-year-old student, does not read text. They just don't read, right? So, how can we take this, the rich group of people that we have here and turn it into a team that can make those courses absolutely rock, absolutely be the best they can be? That's a challenge if you don't have a structure or a framework on which to hang it. And so along came the Oscar rubric, which made a wonderful framework on which to hang this, and it includes video, includes all the things that make a course robust, make it wonderful. So take a team of people that are all excellent, empower them as a team to create the process by which you come up with fantastic courses, group that works together as far as critiquing what it looks like and being able to work together like that. It's a wonderful process, and it works on a continuity scale then, because if something changes in the course, and this is, we're coming to your question, to your answer finally. If something changes that Bill needs something to change in the course, and it's not content-based, right? It's like, this video isn't working for this. You can go back to the team and say, well, look, this isn't working. Can you guys do something else? Can you move us forward on this thing? And they do. There's one person missing up here, by the way, that we don't, that's kind of an adjunct member of our team, and that's the person in charge of accessibility for the campus. She does actually have eyes on the campus, eyes on the courses as well, checks them for accessibility at the same time. We go through this approval process. But think about that. If you've got, I really only have 2 instructional designers now, right? There's only 2 instructional designers, so people are like, you have 9 people on your team doing this. No, I don't. This person works at the library, this person works in instructional technologies. But they dedicate a portion of their job to this, right? And it's not a matter of fact, it's not a matter of, okay, this person's trying to take over instructional design for the college, or this group is going to just isolate themselves and do whatever they want. I had that problem in the past. But now it's much more of a synergistic model that we've created. It's fascinating to watch because I really have empowered them to originally create the model. I mean, I wasn't completely oblivious to what was going on. I really didn't just like walk away and say, "Yeah, it's your job to figure it out." I was trying to provide the impetus to make it happen, right? And part of the science of empowerment is not to just not include yourself, but to basically be the guide on the side for the whole project. And it's absolutely flourished, right? One of the things we know is that if you are only the LMS solution for faculty, then that's all you will ever be. When we hire instructional designers, we hire people with K-12 experience, right? They've had to go through learning pedagogy, go through learning the science and the art of teaching. Another person that you don't see up here is Marie Gibson. Marie's job is a trainer. Her job is to train people in Blackboard in our department. That extricates that part of the job of the instructional designer away from that so that they can actually spend time talking about the science of teaching online. We're very, very fortunate. Thank you, Terry. We're very, very fortunate to be able to take our virtual campus to that level, having a trainer that we're not talking about. We talk a lot about Blackboard, let's face it. All of us do. But to be able to talk about the science of teaching and then integrate that with the elements of good instructional design and good course design, using all the elements, right? Using the library and the best resources we can find to deliver this piece of content, and then video, where we can personalize the courses and make it, so people know what Bill looks like. And Jeremy does do a good job of making Bill look. I'm not there much, Bill. And that really allows Bill and the rest of our 150 plus faculty that we have courses that are that are subject matter experts on our courses, the ability to be historians, the ability to be musicians. And that's the benefits that we've received from that. Is an incredibly innovative group of faculty now that they're not worrying about the LMS anymore. They're worrying about, we're teaching classes, voice classes, singing classes in groups of 20 online. Because they're not having to worry about the LMS. You take care of most of the, using VoiceThread and all the other tools that we have at our disposal to make that happen. So it's really a cool thing to watch, and that's why they're award winning now, right? We're still fighting out where the award's going to be. If it's going to be the library, but it doesn't take a huge change on the campus to make that happen. It takes an organized effort to coordinate these different departments, and a commitment from those departments to actually work together on a common goal. And the nice part about that is having the Oscar rubric and something that you can hang it on, right? Because hanging it on a third party then makes it viable and long term. Don't ever hand me the microphone, Bill, if you don't want me to talk for a long time.
So the thing is, when you look here, much of these have been talked about already, but the thing is, and I'll say it from a faculty member, you're not going to eliminate, in learning, no one ever eliminates discomfort or dissonance. What you can do is reduce it to a tolerable level. And this is the important part of a structure. A viable structure in that sense can reduce the discomfort to a level that is manageable. I mean, this is the reality here. Okay, obviously when it comes to history, I have my PhD. My specialty is New Deal, World War II era. I know my stuff. But coming into this, I don't have the same knowledge. And look, I go back to Lotus Notes, all right? I go back that far, okay? And you blow the dust off me here. But the thing is, when you make those transitions, in a sense, I was effectively a student. And how then do I learn efficiently and effectively to be able to execute my job? So I think this is one of the things of the course development process, the course review you do now in the summer, things like that. This type of structure does help moderate discomfort which can allow then for effectiveness in the execution. Vital point, okay, that it makes a big difference here.
I would say Bill, do that.
Right.
Jump off that.
Sure. I'll go back.
No, what you just touched on there was part of the reason we wanted to have that process with many, many tasks and milestones. Not to, at one point we're like, is this going to overwhelm folks to see these phases broken down into so many different line items? But kind of the opposite happened. It was an assurance that there's a plan, and I have this, you know, there's all these things listed here, but you know, Tom's going to do that, and Jeremy's going to help me with that, and so there was kind of that support system built into it. Yeah.
And really kind of a consistent theme that's emerged throughout as this process has organically developed has been one of really kind of lowering the barriers as much as possible. And we were saying earlier, we're not sure if it's just a function of personality of the folks involved, but we tend to be people who want to help folks, help faculty members get through these barriers that they might have to going online. And so we'll help out with kind of the technical end of things, and it's really kind of, it's worked out well to do that. So.
So when you look at some of the documents and some of the sources that the instructional design people have used, okay, for example, when you look at this kind of breaking down in terms of that, it does provide some structure. I mean, there is a prescriptiveness to this approach here, all right? Larry, you talked earlier this morning in your presentation that one way of learning is what some would more derisively call the seat of your pants type of learning. You kind of go and you kind of figure it out as you go. It's a little bit hard, it's harder to do that type of approach in online. A more structured approach, at least from my perspective, has worked better for me. And never underestimate the ability to minimize anxiety, to modulate it. It can be a big help in terms of the learning process, for sure. The things like the videos. Now, one of the things we see coming up more and more is more interaction with students, but you still have to do it within the demands of the medium. So a lot of that then is more in terms of visual. It's going to be more in terms of, you know, recording and things like that. And how do you do that? You're trying to, you help try to put for students the face with the name and the personality and things like that. But it's not the same dynamic as we're in here now, interacting as people, okay? And all the little details then that have to be done. For just the seeing of the template. Building in a lot of the OSCAR requirements into the template, that's an immense relief from a faculty member's point of view. And as I said earlier, I think you're going to see this in terms of ensuring accessibility issues. I think you might see a similar procedure, or at least with some modifications in that way, as that becomes more and more of an issue. And Andrea, you have something.
That. So our course template has been pretty well received by our faculty so far. So we try to, and there's been many iterations of it now too, but we try to design it with OSCAR in mind so that it was hitting a lot of the standards right off the bat. So we could tell faculty, you know, here's something we're using if you're designing brand new for your course, or if you're refreshing an existing course. We recommend using this. It provides a welcoming start page for students so they can get to know their instructor and have maybe a video, know exactly the timeline, the semester start dates, contact information. So it's hitting a lot of these key pieces right away. And it has access to, our goal is to try to make this as accessible to students as possible. So one of the complaints we've heard from students was every time I'm going into Blackboard, it's like learning Blackboard for the first time. I don't know where things are different colors. It's all, you know, it's all not organized for them in a way where they know where to go. So little by little, with more and more people adopting our template, it's really helped students to know where to go and have some consistency across courses. And it's helped us, I think, troubleshooting too along the way, and members of the team. So we tried to make a is closely aligned to the rubric as we could, but also give flexibility to faculty members as well. So there's the content area of the course can be developed with whatever structure you find appropriate for your content. So you're not locked into something. And we've been finding feedback from other departments. We're in a pilot, and we'll probably talk more about that later with the business department. And we were showing this to the faculty members, and they said, well, why don't, we're going to refresh all these courses. Why don't we just put every course into this template, and then it's going to hit most of these standards, and why don't we just use this? Seems like the best idea. So we're getting a lot of support from faculty using it, and from students as well. So we've found a big success using that.
We do want to allow some time for questions here, so let me go through.
Did you flag us for the stop time? Yeah, we got flagged for the stop time.
Well, but I mean, to just give you a quick idea here. 4:15. Right, it does. I'm sorry. Yeah, well, it goes 4:15. Okay, but part of it too, for example, is that, and we've been talking about some of these things, is that in a sense, how do you apply this process within the realities of online technology? Because when you go with online, you're committing to, in effect, renovation from time to time. You are committing to that. And so the thing is that the technology, for example, changes far faster than, in a sense, the ability to actually make the changes with it. So it's not only just making the changes, but the intent in which you bring to the process of making the change. For example, when you shifted, Terry, you know this better than I do, when you made the shift to Blackboard in 2014, my God, that was horrendous. I mean, we're talking weeping, wailing, gnashing of teeth, losing a hair, and the whole 9 yards. I mean, this is the type of thing that will happen periodically. I mean, because if SUNY system, if something comes along the next few years, and SUNY says we're going to do this, well, then you're going to have that reality. So I kind of harp on this point because it is important. When you do it, you're trying to mesh efficiency and effectiveness. So the purpose in which you come into this matters a lot. This is part of the advantage of this type of structure approach. You have a better chance of achieving that. The other thing we have are findings. So for example, the Summer Institute, which I took last year and will be able to take again this year, dealing with the ramifications of the Americans with Disabilities Act. That's going to become more and more important. There's more and more urgency to accomplish this. How do you do it? Because I can tell you myself, I know little to next to nothing, I don't mean this in a mean way, about the ADA, the policies of it, what has to comply, what does not comply. All that has to be brought into play. And it will continue to be more of an issue as time goes on. The tracking of data over time. This really comes into particularly evaluation and assessment. Here's the distinction I make. Evaluation is something individual. You're grading individual students. Assessment involves the aggregation of data, and then to look at that data over time for change. Now, tracking that data over time, that becomes a challenge in a big way. Is there ways to facilitate that so that the data is reliable, that you're making the reliable comparisons, not just apples to apples, but Granny Smiths to Granny Smiths, and you can then use that data not in a causal way, but in a correlative way, okay? Tendencies, do we make the change based on this? This is very important. My colleagues here, if you want to chime in on this, because the assessment part is a huge one that is always going to be present regardless of what time or what course you're taking and the year you're teaching it, things like that.
Bill, one thing that, to add to that, the Summer Institute you referred to quickly, right? Summer Institute is At Monroe, we don't pay faculty to develop courses. There's no stipend for developing an online course. And there's no time where we can actually pay them because there's no structure in place for that. It's contractually that they don't get paid. So what we do is in the summertime when they're off contract for the 2 months, because our faculty work until June 30th, during July and August, we can have them come back to campus and we can pay them a small stipend, basically gas, to come back to campus to upgrade their courses. Now, the reason they're wanting to and upgrading their courses is because we've been successful in doing one of the things that, if you've been through the institutional readiness project, you'll know that the first tenets of the institutional readiness project says, is online learning, what would you call it, strategic in the college, right? Is it part of a strategic plan? In order to make all this happen, now online learning is part of our strategic plan. In fact, one of the parts of the strategic plan says all courses will adhere to the OSCAR rubric in the strategic plan. It's become that important on our campus. And if you can get to that point where you're doing that, and the program, online program is strategic, and can get it into the strategic plan using the OSCAR rubric or using the IR process they have through SUNY, you will be able to do these types of things, right? I've seen a lot of campuses that have one person or a half a person who are responsible for online learning, and it's kind of mitigated back to them and say, okay, you're the person. You're the person who's going to do this. And I'm not going to go off on my tangent that I did this morning. But if it works, if online learning works, and you get to have a third of your students, like we have right now, are online students, considered online students, you need it to be part of the strategic plan of the college, right? And so all the things that we do, especially supporting faculty and doing faculty development and training, are all part of that, right? It all becomes part of that. So I think the big piece of that kind of is my job to do, is to help make online learning strategic within the college. And these are the kind of things that help make it that way. So if you are one person, and I've done the solo thing, right? When I started at Finger Lakes, the Finger Lakes job, I was online learning at Finger Lakes back in 2004, 2005. If you don't have people to support you, if you don't have a team approach, you're in trouble, right? Because you're killing yourself and you're working anywhere, anytime, you're working weekends and nights and everything else. But making it strategic on your campus does help you, and it also helps you get the group of people surrounding you, because then the strategic plan of the college is saying this is what you're going to do. So.
Now, and I think we can bring some of these up in questions, but part of the prompts we have, I made this distinction here between causal and correlative, and I think the thing is, when people look at online as a silver bullet, I would argue they're looking at this more as a causal relationship. If we do this, this will happen. Yay, yay, yay! The heavens will open, the angels will sing, and everything will be, and we'll have rapture here. Well, it doesn't really work that way. It's more about, in a sense, I'll borrow from Jeremy here in terms of photography. It's really, I think, it's more correlative in the sense of composition. You are taking elements and you are arranging them in relationship to each other. And over time, that relationship changes, the elements change. It's more of a correlative structure here. And I realize that you might have somebody in the accounting office that looks at this and say, gee, we can bring in this technology and it's a hell of a lot less labor costs, hooray. But I don't think it would work that way. And that it just doesn't. If you're going to commit to that sort of approach, this is a people approach. And it's worth committing to. But you got to be able to do it, and it's a type of ongoing investment. There, I'll rant for you, okay? Not about the software, okay? And then how do you time the team approach to future issues? Because laws and regulations will change. Competition for enrollment. That is a major one, and that's where, and the demographic trends, depending on who you talk to, are midland to dismal, all right? The increasing presence of online. Now you get into scalability here, because you brought up some figures this morning. As online becomes more omnipresent in the curricular mix, you then have to be able to match it with resources. You're going to try to increase that number, you've got to have that scale. Can you do it? Okay, those are issues you got to deal with, and they got to be dealt with, I think, in a thoughtful way. And so, let's open it up here for questions, if we would. And we hope that you have plenty. Yeah.
Well, I've been involved in this, and I've had some of my courses reviewed by Oscar. There's a lot of Oscar I really like. However, there are parts of Oscar I do not like. And this is especially true partly because of the discipline I'm in, which is computer science. And one of the things they talk about is they want you to have a separate site for your online section versus an in-class or traditional. I won't do that. Some of my classes are actually mixed with online and in-class students. I can't have two different sites. So we do ours as, we do it for the online students. We then allow it to be supplemental to the in-class students. And I actually found that there's more engagement because I've got students, that are both online and traditional.
I would just say at Binghamton, we did away with that by taking the Oscar rubric and adjusting it to our needs. So
I was told I could ignore parts of it.
That isn't even part of our version of the rubric.
Yeah.
So we went through and we just make sure that every course at the university follows the same rubric. So, there.
Yes.
And that's part of the openness of the
Right.
Oscar rubric.
Yes.
So what are we talking scope of work? How many are you in the refresh process, in the initial design process? You've got this 18-week developmental plan. Where are we at with that?
So,
Yeah, go ahead, Tom. Tom and I have a very busy semester, so I think we each have about, would it be fair to say 12
I've got about,
online courses each
Yeah,
that
and
we're
most of those
managing?
most of
Some
those
are
are new.
some are for fall. So at one time, that's probably accurate. We're growing and we're trying to manage the workload of that, and
Is that
that's,
what you're asking, Stan?
Yeah.
And then as far as that summer institute, that's kind of like an accelerated version of that 18-week process. And we have about 20.
25.
We're going to refresh,
25 this summer.
over the summer.
And they'll be doing a lot of the work too, so we'll be kind of training them
Yeah.
how to use the rubric, doing a lot of peer review. They'll be kind of sharing their course. So there's a lot that's more on the faculty member during the summer institute, 'cause it's such a rapid time frame that we have to work with. And then we also are doing a pilot this summer with our business department, going through all of their existing courses and helping them transfer their courses into the template, and having like a peer review team from the department help us review courses. So we're looking at other ways to manage that workload, and for us it's working for now, and we're always looking for creative solutions.
Two other things. How many courses overall are you managing? How many is MCC?
Sections?
Sections.
Yeah, how many sections?
Sections are
Well, yeah, I mean,
About 285 sections running.
How many?
285 sections.
Mm-hmm.
And are you using any, what kind of management tools are you to make sure that everything is getting done?
That's a great question.
So we have a new one coming.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're just switching that right now.
Yeah, we currently have this thing that our trainer, Marie Gibson, developed out of Access, which it's great as far as we're able to kind of document those steps and generate some reports, but it has its limitations as well. So as Larry just mentioned, we're currently pursuing a project management
I was going to ask you, why
software.
aren't you using a project management tool?
Yeah,
Well-
it's needed, so we're
Yeah.
looking at,
Yeah, we're actually
one now.
right on the cusp of implementing it right now. We went through a period of looking at various project management tools, and this is beyond our area. This is for the department in general. We found an open source tool called Open Project that is out of somewhere in Scandinavia, which there seem to be a lot of like really good open source projects coming out of Scandinavia that we've run into recently. What's that? Yeah. But it's a very flexible tool we've found, so we're kind of excited to actually kind of get into the meat of it. We're right now we're in the process of getting the server set up for it. It runs on a Linux server, so we had to kind of coordinate with our computer and networking folks to get that up and running there. I wanted to touch also, you were asking about workload, and it's a little bit different for Anjali and I as members of the committee than it is for Tom and Andrea. Tom and Andrea, they really do quite a bit of work for each of these courses that we're working on. Anjali and I, it tends to be more flexible, really depending on the course and the conversations that we have, the amount of work that we end up doing. And sometimes, from a multimedia standpoint, sometimes you're really just kind of there to set the faculty member free, and some faculty members, they love producing their own content, and so we kind of facilitate that. We train them on stuff. We help them with the more technical aspects like the captioning and that sort of thing. But it's really a matter of setting them free. Other ones, we're really doing production work with them. And sometimes it can be very varied in terms of the production work. I mean, sometimes it's actual kind of coming up with skits that you want to demonstrate a concept. Sometimes it's going out and helping them with interviews with folks that are out in industry, if that's what they want to get across to the folks there. And then it's also a matter of finding resources that are out there. I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, I think sometimes, there's like a clear product, something that needs to happen after the meeting, like a LibGuide, like a research guide or an instruction session or something that kind of comes out of it and is directly related to whatever we talked about. But sometimes it's just sharing information and kind of making the connection and like letting faculty know about things like OER, and then maybe what comes out of that isn't even necessarily directly related to that course, but then maybe they get connected to the OER librarian and kind of decide to adapt, to adopt OER in a different course or for that course. So it's not quite as, I guess it's not quite as direct as what you're doing, but it's still all kind of comes around.
I was going to touch on one other thing as far as the workload thing goes for the instructional designer. That also varies. We kind of made this leap with Larry's persuasion to jump into more of a how can we help you, how can we serve you, which has worked out really great. So what that means is sometimes we actually will say to the faculty member, here's your kind of structure that you worked out in this document. What if I kind of framed it out for you in the LMS, which we didn't do that, a few years ago. Some folks, that is one of those things that's a barrier for them that they maybe didn't want to cross, but that offer gives us some buy-in from that instructor.
Talk about that a little bit more. Talk about the actual process.
The module planner?
Yeah.
So
module planner.
we do have a basic module planner where they work from their outcomes, and then it basically looks like a chart where they're filling out how am I going to deliver content for these modules, how am I going to engage the students and also assess, and of course all those tied to outcomes. We actually ask them to come with that completed to that first mandatory team meeting so that all of us around the table have this document to reference, to look at, to ask questions. It doesn't have to be completed 100%. There should be holes in it. Those are questions that we can talk about during that instructional design team meeting. So that definitely happens. That meeting is usually about an hour.
And how do they do that?
How do they complete that?
Yeah. I think it's just,
Yeah.
they handwrite it.
Yeah, they can, or we send it to them in a Word doc and
Yeah.
they fill it out.
But they have to actually, they chunk their course, right?
Right.
And we've been talking about that since,
I'm sorry, which one? Which frame?
no.
Oh, the modular.
So,
Oh, yeah.
back when we were on, back when Bill was a younger man, and we were using, what did we use? Lotus. We're back on Lotus, right?
I know. I
But Lotus was brilliant, okay? The whole concept of what we did in Lotus was brilliant because we handed faculty a template and they had to fill in the blanks, right? And so how we did that was we replicated the chunk over and over and over again. If it was a 15-week course and they wanted to do every 2 weeks, we'd have 8 different modules, but it was the same in every single module, right? So that mindset created this project of this planning document. I'll never forget Rick Costanza teaching us this little how to chunk your course piece and it made faculty totally rethink their courses, right? Rethink the actual instruction of their courses. And what we've done is take that, and he laughed about the learning outcomes, but everything we do now is based on taking the learning outcomes from the course and putting them in the far right column, and then everything they do in the rest of the chunk has to actually align with those learning outcomes.
Right.
Right? Kind of like what teaching is. And when you show that to somebody who's in charge of assessment, they're like, yes, that's what we need to do. Middle states loved it. Middle states absolutely loved it. We showed them, here's how we do this, and they're like, yes, that's what you're supposed to be doing. In fact, you're doing that for all your new courses. Now go back and do it for all the other courses that you have in place. And it became a Middle States directive that we actually have to do this. This is not something that, when they said using the Oscar rubric, we make sure that, yeah. But the reality is, when you're talking about, all of us are struggling with Middle States in their assessments, right? They change the requirements in assessment all the time. It feels like every time there's a new review, we have to change the way we do assessments. This is something that when you chunk the course from the beginning based on learning outcomes, and then align everything to those learning outcomes, it makes it really easy to get the course chunked out. Right? And so that's really what the focus is. That's a whole lot different than here's how you use Blackboard. Right? So now you're talking about course structure, intricate course structure, as opposed to learning management systems and point and click stuff. Right? We don't do that. We want to do the science of teaching.
Yes, ma'am. And then,
Oh, a statement and then a question. So what we do as far as in relation to your planning document, we ask that the all instructors before they can even get their course sites have to create, we call it a structured instructional assessment document. And it lists out everything that they need to do and demonstrate that they're meeting the Carnegie hours for the course. So that was our way to make Middle States happy.
I'm sorry, where are you from?
Mohawk Valley.
Yeah,
So my question is, how far in advance are you aware that you have a new instructor for online teaching? And do you allow for adjuncts to teach online classes? Because I typically, if I find out 3 weeks prior, sometimes that is pushing it. And sometimes it's much closer to the beginning of the semester. So just curious.
So one thing about that is I'm not going to dominate the conversation, but I am. So those are the exceptions, not the rule, right? Those things happen. You'd hope that they wouldn't happen that way, but when you've got a continuing improvement process, right, you'd hope that the exceptions doesn't happen, but they do, and we deal with those as they come along. We've been able to, with this process, we've been able to mitigate that a lot. What do I think? And she's not in the room, so I can talk about her. When Alex, this whole framework, and probably what you do is remnants of SLN1 back in the days, and SLN1 had that structure, and your version probably evolved from that a long time ago, and some other people's have evolved from what we did a long time ago. It's basically good science of teaching, right? Most of our faculty have never seen that. Most of our faculty were handed a textbook and a syllabus and said, here, go. Right? They never went through the pedagogical training and stuff. And this is the first time they're seeing those things. And to chunk it down, you've heard it. If you're an instructional designer, you're in online learning, you've heard them all say, wow, this is going to change the way I teach my face-to-face classes. Right? And that's kind of talking about what you're saying.
I could add a VA, that same thing, yeah.
So, Terry?
I'm sorry, Hughes,
I just wanted to add to that question though, because a lot of that is policy. We've been doing online learning MCC since early 90s, Lotus Notes, everything. So we, for a long time, have had the requirement that a faculty member become certified in Blackboard before they can teach online. We have that, he mentioned Reed Gibson, who has a training program to get them certified. If they're not certified, they can't be put on the schedule. The exception happens where they are put on the schedule, and then we deal with it. But we have a long-standing policy, a chair's handbook, so chairs understand new chairs. This is what's expected. No, you shouldn't put them on there. Doesn't matter whether they're adjunct or not. Yes, we use lots of adjuncts to teach online, but that's policy. If you don't have that policy, then it is the wild, wild west, and you need that policy if you're going to have an institutional program, is what I would say.
We have a similar policy.
Hi, I'm an instructional designer as well. Kudos, good job, guys. And I work in an environment, collaborative environment, along with faculty and support as well. But one thing I didn't see here, and maybe you cover these roles as well, is do you utilize any type of educational support specialists or people who we call them instructional technologists, who have the tools so I go to them and I say, they want to do this online and I don't know of a tool. Can you help me find one that's accessible? Or, hey, we're scaffolding this paper, but the students really need a resource on how to create theses, and I don't have that. Do you have any other members of the team, or is that you guys?
That's us.
We do that too. We also collaborate with the TCC.
Yep. Which is our.
That's really the librarian.
Uh-huh.
So our librarian is an online librarian, and when Terry designed that particular position, he designed it as a 0.5 FTE in the library and 0.5 FTE in our area, in instructional design, basically. And that's Anjali, you talk about, that's really her job.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of thing of finding resources, how to put resources in Blackboard, for instance, like how to embed a video from a library database or how to link permanently to a library article, that kind of thing. I'm able to support that.
I'm more getting at, I need a free timeline tool that's accessible, that groups can use, it's edited,
And that too, yeah.
That's you too?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I would just say this whole group has those skill sets. So we've used the name instructional technologist, instructional designer. For years, it used to be instructional designer / technology trainer. So the group has that skill set. I'll also throw out a shameless plug. We have an open position right now as an instructional technologist who will be the software trainer, and we're also looking for that skill set from a person that's been retiring and has been there for 25 years too. So the group, Instructional Technologies, that's one thing we look for in all of them, and there's other people in that mix that do that within our team as well.
Thank you.
There is one thing I also want to add too as well. We're talking about, I think, future changes and challenges to what we're doing here. And one of them is going to involve what I'll make the distinction between curriculum and skills. We're getting more students coming in with varying degrees of deficit, for example, in reading and writing. Now, where's the challenge come in for me? Okay, all right, history is that's where I'm trained, okay? My better half in the back, her master's is in composition and rhetoric. The thing is, I'm not trained to teach writing. Yes, I can write. I'm not trained to teach it, okay? I'm not a trained reading specialist. One of the challenges that I see coming up down the road, and I think it won't be minor, is going to be, okay, effectively trying to help remediate to some degree people coming in at varying levels of deficit regarding writing and reading. In other words, it's not just from our English 101 basic composition course, but then it's in my course because writing is one of the biggest things they do. The reading, yes, I know there are 18-year-olds who don't like to read anymore. I get that, but we all teach in disciplines that generally you do convey a good deal of material by the written word. You've got to be able to take it in properly. So I think one of the challenges we're going to see, and on this model, is how you develop that type of assistance that's never going to fully remediate the problems, but it might minimize certain problems enough so the student can perform credibly in the class. I think that's going to be one of the major ones that I see coming down the chute.
remediation.
Okay.
And remedial courses and developmental courses.
I understand that, but I think the thing is
And
that,
that's a shame. I mean, I think
right.
it's wrong, but I'm just saying.
But I think that issue keeps coming, and particularly in the community college situation, where the access is broad for varying good reasons. So I think that's one of the things. It's going to be a challenge. I think pedagogically, it's a challenge of delivering it in ways that people can understand. But also, they're trying to work with this at the same time. They're also taking a course. So I see that as one thing educationally. If we're looking at, say, future challenges, that would be one of them. There might be others, yes.
I just wanted to touch on real quickly. I was remembering our colleague from Mohawk Valley there. You were asking also about adjuncts, whether we have adjuncts teaching online, which we do have them teaching online. I don't know if we want to add anything beyond that, but.
Well, I mean, because what part of it for us, for example, at Monroe would be like is departmental policy. Okay, certain departments do allow more readily than others. The training, as Terry talked about, that is part of policy. It also comes into things such as hiring practices in terms of vis-a-vis the courses that need to be taught, courses being offered. All that's going to come into play, and I guess one of the things would be a consequence of adjuncts would be when you're looking at investing that time in training, will the adjunct be there for a while? Because if the adjunct is, for example, is looking at a full-time position, and they get the chance, then there's going to be some sort of loss, I guess, in terms of that investment there. So that would be a factor of.
We're looking at other colleges and working with some of the groups that I work with. We have a much smaller percentage of adjuncts teaching than we do at other schools, honestly. And I think that's going to become more and more the way of it at community colleges. As our full-time faculty are struggling to make load, and online learning keeps increasing, colleges are very quickly coming to the fact that this is the way that courses are going to be delivered for the future, and we need our full-time faculty to make load. So we're going to put full-time faculty on these courses as much as we can. And that's a great thing, right? Now you got people that are creating the content, actually teaching the courses as well, not passing it down to an adjunct. That being said, there's also tremendous adjuncts out there. And God forbid, I adjunct at other campuses, so I think.
Sir, and then ma'am.
So first of all, very good work you guys are doing. Congratulations on the award you got today. I teach an online class and have developed something like what you have done with the template and Blackboard. Mine was much better. So I was wondering if there's any way I could try out your template.
Yes.
Sure.
We have an example. If you go to use that link up there, there's a copy of the zip file, or you can email anyone that wants
So
to.
it's a template I can download?
Yes.
Or-
you
It's
can.
a
We have
Blackboard.
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 though.
Blackboard
Are you-
template.
It's Blackboard template.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as a faculty member, I can use that? Or
We're-
do I have to go to my IT people and say, can you install
You,
this?
you
now?"
might have to work with your IT people. Are you on Blackboard as well right
Yes,
now?
yes,
Yes,
we are.
yeah. So it should be able to have them set up a development shell for you. Might be able to get that to work.
Yeah.
So at my campus right now, as far as course reviews, it sort of is the wild, wild west, which really sucks. And there's also one of me. So we're working right now with our provost on trying to get course review policy written into the faculty handbook. Do you guys have something on your campus like that? Is there like kind of a strict procedure or a policy that says courses have to be refreshed every 2 years, or that like all online, there's nothing, people just,
It's not the Wild West, though. What we're working on right now. So I was going to answer Stan's question he had before, talking about the continuous improvement program for the program itself. So what we've done is we've had the institutional readiness, like most other campuses, right? And that became our litmus test, basically, or our action plan. One of the things on the action plan is how often do you review your courses, right? So we've taken that, and we have a virtual campus advisory board who are now taking that and saying, oh, here's what we did up to this point. Now we're 3 years into this. So the continuous improvement says we're going to review, use that template, or use that institutional readiness action plan and update it every 3 years. Part of those things that are in there is the recommendation will go and it says courses will be part of the program review process. So when we do program review for each one of our degree programs, it's going to be worked into the program review process. That's going up to Faculty Senate, who will accept hopefully will accept our IR proposal in its entirety, and that will be part of it that way. So we really want to get that as part of the program review process and tie closely with the assessment people across the other side of campus. That's not that they're our side of campus, aren't they? That's academics. So I'll tell you though, the biggest thing you can do to ensure that you're doing this is keep talking about the OCR group that's suing all of us for accessibility. Accessibility is the best way to facilitate change in online courses. I'm telling you that right now. If you can get them to understand that these courses have to be accessible, and hey, as long as we're making them accessible, here's a whole rubric to make them great, as opposed to just accessible. So that's a way to motivate that, because it's a lawsuit, right?
Ultimatum.
The rumor got out on our campus that, we got it going.
No, we're not there yet.
Okay, the rumor got out on our campus that unless you went through this the ASCO rubric review, that you weren't going to be allowed to teach online.
Yeah.
Rumors. Great.
Just write it on the bathroom
The
walls.
next day, the entire English department, after an English department meeting, the entire English department signed up for the Summer Institute to make sure that they could still teach online for the fall. It's like, I never said that you couldn't teach online for the fall. But you know what?
But they stayed.
Sure, yeah, you can't teach online for the fall. But we do not have that policy. I mean, policies are written by the Board of Trustees, right? And so the procedures are there, they're in place. Like we have a procedure where, and if you don't go through the Blackboard training by the trainer and that piece of it, you don't get your course populated with students. Okay, so if you're not trained, even if you're face-to-face, right? So we're not going to put people out there in harm's way. I'm talking about the students with untrained faculty.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate here.
Of course you are.
Of course I am. Every group should have a devil's advocate. Templates are great. However, the reality is not, you have a template, not all content fits really well into it. What struggles have you had with certain types of content that does not fit into your template? And that's the part, I mean, as I teaching computer science, which is a little different than some of the other disciplines, I've run into some of those problems. Right. And luckily I am an instructional designer in addition to faculty. So I used to teach web design. So for me, it's not as difficult. I've been able to just write open the HTML editor, write the code I need to fix what I want it to do.
Yeah.
But they don't have,
I would say that our template is really more focused on the navigation of the course. So the content area is that's the most open, flexible space of our template. So our purpose, our hope was that if there was one place students knew, wow, I can't talk. If there's one place, it's been an hour and a half almost, where students knew where they could go to get the course content. They click that, and then within there, that's going to look different from instructor from course to course.
Right.
And that's where we have that built-in flexibility balanced with the structure.
Because I see a problem. And I also see the fact that it can constrain certain faculty if they don't have that flexibility to be able to do.
Right.
So let me ask you the question though that goes with this. Have you ever had a blind student in your classes?
Yes.
So if you're a blind student and you're taking 5 online classes, and every one of the navigations is different that you're going through of where things are in the menu and everything else, and I've had to deal with this, and when you have to testify and go through discovery in court, you learn very quickly. I had to teach Microsoft Word online to a blind person, and I learned a tremendous amount of what Excel, what accessibility really means, right?
I have a reading disability.
So
I'm there.
So when you're dealing with students, and the thing of it is now, what these OCR lawsuits are all about is that the people with disabilities do not have to disclose that they have them. So you have to universally design your courses so that any student, and if you're teaching HTML or you're teaching JavaScript to those students, That's a real challenge. And if they've got to worry more about the learning management system than they do about the content of the course, then that's a bad thing, let's face it, right? Then they're worried about navigating the course. Our goal with the template is to get rid of that concern and have them focus on learning HTML, have them focus on learning music or science or history. Because having to learn HTML, just because the faculty member in this particular case wants to make it pretty their way, which is what we deal with, right? That's the Wild West we're talking about. Well, no, I'm going to use these icons, none of which are accessible, none of which have tags on them. Or I'm going to structure the menu exactly the opposite of the way that you guys do it, just because I think I like it better that way, because I'm a faculty member and I can. Now, we're opening ourselves and we're culpable for that particular lawsuit, because those students can now say they're not accessible. They're not doing everything they can to make those courses accessible to me. And we can't say, what are we going to say? So don't take the courses then if you're blind. No, you can't.
No, you can't, that's not the answer.
So,
And I would say something here is that, and I find it from the faculty perspective, a certain amount of rationalization and consistency is essential in development. I mean, I think that's part of structure. Structure implies that you've got parameters to work within. It's a framework. And the template they're using here is trying to address these framework issues. That's vital. I mean, it really is. I mean, you see it in terms of publishers. Publishers are far more sensitive now in terms of accessibility and things like that. It's important, if you're going to do a team-type cooperative approach, then there's going to have to be a give and take. That is fundamental. Now, I realize that's another NSS statement here, but believe me, it's one thing to comprehend it, it's another thing to accept that reality and live within its dictates. One of the things I have to realize myself, in my training, I got no coursework in pedagogy or andragogy. So a lot of what I think I've learned about teaching has been more of a type of potpourri approach. You grab something here, you grab something there, you kind of put it together in your own. And a reality of teaching is not just what you know, but then how do you pitch it. I think some certain degrees of standardization when it comes to these frameworks is important to then be able to figure out how to use your parameters, your space within effectively. I don't think it has to be Wild West. I don't think it can be Wild West. There has to be some boundaries that you can then creatively work within. Terry?
I mean, this is an award-winning group, and there's a few more members of this team, and two of them are librarians, and Alice sitting in front, and Andrea isn't here right now, but I think the beauty of this team is we've talked a lot about online learning here, but they've established relationships with our faculty who trust them with everything. So when OER came around, can we do it? Yep, we got it. Don't even worry about
What timing?
OER came around.
Coincidence.
Adoption of any new thing is just, I have no worries. We got this oiled, we got this down. We know how to do things. It doesn't matter what the thing is. I think that makes it my job easier than it makes everyone else's. And the faculty just know that it's not a concern because we've got it. Just want to throw that out.
And faculty trust us enough that a lot of times we get questions about totally unrelated things. And they'll just come to us. It's like, oh, they've helped us before. Yeah.
And on that note of what's done in Las Vegas should stay in Las Vegas, we'd like to thank you all for coming, and we hope it's been informative and educational for all of you. Thank you very much.
Yep.